Welcome to Changing Higher Ed, a podcast dedicated to helping higher education leaders improve their institutions. My name is Dr. Drum McNaughton, and I'm the CEO of The Change Leader, a management consultancy that helps university leaders create sustainable higher ed institutions through holistic approaches to strategic management, university academics and operations, change management, leadership, and governance. Our podcast brings you the latest in higher ed news, as well as some of the top experts in our profession who will share with you their perspectives on how you can grow your institution. Our special guest today is Dr. Susan Aldridge, Senior Vice President for Online Learning at Drexel University and President of Drexel University Online. Susan's responsible for building an administrative division that provides comprehensive services for online students while also pursuing innovative approaches to online curricula, teaching, and student assessment. This isn't Susan's first rodeo. She's held executive leadership positions in some of the largest universities in the country, including President of University of Maryland's University College and 10 years as Vice Chancellor for the Global Campus at Troy University in Alabama. Susan's known for growth strategies that work and putting into place sophisticated analytic systems for measuring quality service and student success and growing enrollments and retention rates. We're fortunate to have Susan, who took some time out of her busy schedule to spend a few minutes with us. Hi, Susan. Welcome to the show.
Hi, it's very nice to work with you today. Thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Been looking forward to having you on the show for a while now. You've been traveling quite a bit lately, haven't you?
Well, yes, there have been a number of speaking engagements and meetings lately. There's a lot happening around the country that's really exciting. So it's an opportunity to not only share what we're doing at Drexel, but also to find out what's innovative and new that's happening around the United States and around the world.
That's really neat. What have you been hearing out there when you've been on the road?
Well, there are a number of things. Number one, there are market forces that are really leading to a lot of disruption in terms of higher education and the impact that it's going to have on our institutions. Number two, there's some tremendous innovation that's occurring with all types of technology, enhanced education, and the ways in which we teach students and the ways in which they learn. Institutions are testing new models for personalizing education for their students and diversifying their portfolio of programs to what employers are expecting in terms of the knowledge of our graduates these days. So there's a lot going on, new models, new business models, new market forces affecting our work, and very creative uses of technology for how we better serve the students, and second of all, how we improve the learning process for our students as well.
That's fabulous, because right now higher ed is really in a mature to declining market. We've seen 180 institutions merge or close in the last 3 years. Something has to change from an innovation perspective.
Yes, and I think institutions are watching the changing demographics, and maybe we could talk about that first. There are some serious shifts that are going to occur in various areas of the United States over the next 5 years, and institutions that are not watching those demographic shifts are going to be in for a real shock. So many of us are getting prepared for those demographic shifts now, and we're initiating a number of new projects, models, and activities on our campuses in order to be able to ride through the demographic shifts in our particular geographic areas that will be impacted and simultaneously take advantage of those shifts as well.
Well, what kind of shifts have you been seeing from a demographic perspective?
If you and any of your listeners have read the book Demographics and the Demand for Higher Education by Nathan Grawe, Grawe, he eloquently talks about the impact that the economic crash in 2008 had on the birth rates. They've not recovered from that time. So the greatest impact is going to be in the Northeast, but we're also seeing an impact in the Midwest as well. Not as much in the Southwest or in the Southeast, but there are pockets that are going to be impacted with that declining birth rate that never recovered. So the time frame we're looking at, where there will be a major decline, like falling off a cliff decline, is going to be in the 2025, 2026 timeframe, which for planning purposes is kind of right around the corner. And that shift as a result of the declining birth rate from 2008 forward and the fact that there will not be as many high school graduates at that time, and therefore institutions, particularly in the Northeast and in the Midwest, are all going to be competing for the same types of students. We're all going to be having to compete for those high-performing students coming to our institutions, and there will be much fewer of them. So the question is whether or not our brands and our programs will carry us through to be able to recruit students nationally rather than just regionally.
That's a great point. And the other thing which we've learned when we were out in Scottsdale together at the CALEM conference was that 74% of all students nowadays are online in one form or another. They're post-traditionals, an area that you're very familiar with. But the other challenge with that as well is students generally enroll at a college within driving distance, regardless of whether it's online or not.
You know, the brand of the institution does carry that. You're exactly right about those demographics. We do have a tendency to see that. Students want the opportunity to go and touch the ground of an institution if possible, but for the most part, they take online courses and programs because they can't get to a 3-day-a-week, 2-day-a-week schedule for all kinds of reasons, travel, their work, childcare, traffic, you name it. They cannot attend a traditional institution. And we know that. I mean, 90% of our online students at Drexel work full time. They could not come to campus for programs if it was a requirement. So the brand oftentimes gives them comfort in that close proximity. But we have students at Drexel University online. We have students in all 50 states and in 30 foreign countries. So it's not just geographic proximity, but they hear a lot about the institutions when they happen to live in the region.
Well, I think that for a brand name like Drexel or Harvard, who has just rolled out their MBA online, or University of Pennsylvania, who's doing an undergraduate program, I don't think they have the same issues that a smaller university does with brand recognition. So it makes perfect sense that you're able to have students from all 50 states and all over the globe.
Part of that is program driven. So the online students, and particularly the adult student online market, are seeking the academic programs that they need in order to enhance their credentials, in order to either be promoted in the companies where they're currently working or change jobs and change careers. So this is a population that will go to institutions that may not be in that 100-mile geographic area if they know the credentials that they need in order to be able to advance their career. So when they do a Google search, it's often based upon program, not necessarily by institution, unless they're very familiar with the institution.
It makes perfect sense. I know when I went back to do my graduate work, this was back in the late 90s, and we didn't have the internet back then, or I'm sorry, Al Gore had just invented the internet. What am I thinking? And I ended up talking to friends and found out where they were going and made my decision by that.
That happens a lot, particularly with the younger traditional students. The adult students are quite savvy these days. They're very savvy researchers online because you may not have had the opportunity to do that type of search. Today, they're savvy researchers. They will look for the credential that they need in order to give them the best possibility for career enhancement or for changing careers.
Makes perfect sense. And what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing is that not only do you have to have the programs, but you also have to have an excellent online marketing presence to attract students, especially for an online program.
Yes, that's absolutely correct these days. And with thousands of higher education institutions offering similar types of programs, I'm just going to give you some general examples of psychology or an undergraduate degree in business or education or an MBA program. There are so many of these programs that are being offered by thousands of institutions that without very sophisticated search engine optimization teams, it becomes really difficult to have any visibility on the first page or the top of the page in this environment. And it also means that institutions are all competing with the same word searches. So we're all driving up the cost of student acquisition for each other.
That's always nice. Ha ha. Well, the other thing too about the demographics is, and you alluded this earlier when we were talking, is these students that are coming out of high school right now, these traditionals, are very different than the students that had come out before them. They're all digital natives, but they really expect kind of a personal touch. And that's one of the things you've been able to do at Drexel just in an outstanding way.
Well, thank you, Jim, for that. We've worked very diligently at that because we know that the personalization serves a number of different functions. Number one, we're more likely to be able to keep a student and retain them through to graduation, the more personalized from the very first contact all the way through their academic program can be. Second of all, we also know that the technologies that are available that support personalization simultaneously create efficiencies and effectiveness that drive down the personnel costs for us long term. So we've invested in technologies that institutions might not pay much attention to on a day-to-day basis, but they're absolutely a critical investment for our future if we want to provide more personalized support for the students, increase our efficiency, as well as increasing our effectiveness. So we can spend more time talking about that if you want to.
Oh, I'd love to. I'd love to hear what the special sauce is made out of.
Well, let's talk about, they're kind of in three ways. Let's talk about optimizing the student experience or the prospective student experience. What we're really trying to do is address the student expectations. The students that come to us, really to your point, Drum, they have very high expectations these days. They don't mind paying a little more for their education, but they expect a value for that investment. It's not just a return on investment because of the degree. They expect value for that investment in terms of the experience that they have at the institution. So how do we do that? We have to manage the various pipelines or the journey that that student has with us from beginning to end. So in the past, we outsourced our call center. So we have insourced that center. We want every touch point with that prospective student to be one that reflects our brand, gives the student choices. So how do we do that? We have what we call an omni-channel communication based upon student preference. Our counselors, advisors can speak with these students based upon their preference for how they want to be communicated with Drexel. They can communicate through video conferencing, chat, text, email, phone. We have smart routing systems. So if we've spoken with a prospective student or a student before, when they call in, our systems automatically recognize who they are. They're automatically routed. There's no telephone tree or music or anything else, no menu trees on the phones. They're automatically routed to the individual that specializes in that particular area. Let's say it's healthcare or nursing or business. Within that second, that call is being routed to the person that has expertise in that area. Multiple screens immediately pop up that include all the recent communications with that prospective student. If they've spent a lot of time on particular pages of the website, like how to finance your education, those screens automatically pop up as well. So just in the routing time that call goes to that counselor on my team, they already have the screens up that are most likely going to be helpful to make sure that the communication with that prospective student is in the format they want: texting, phone call, chat, video conferencing, and simultaneously the information that is most likely going to be needed at that particular point in time will be available to that counselor.
That's fabulous. I've never heard anyone who has automated the process like you have. This is fabulous.
It gets even better. We created a cloud-based contact center as well. So not only is it smart routing, it's discipline specific in terms of making sure that we have our staff from top to bottom trained in certain disciplines. It's also how we create efficiency. None of us at any institution has a plethora of resources. I think some people think because we're a private institution, of course, we're given, lots of additional resources every year. That doesn't happen in any institution. There are always competing needs. So I think for the future, and where we're going for the future is using artificial intelligence to make sure we're also efficient. So this smart routing manages our workforce better. It helps us understand what times of the day we need to have a certain number of people available. It helps us with our staffing levels. It helps ensure that we have staff with expertise in certain areas available at certain times during the day. So we're managing our staff more effectively. And then we're more efficient. So how do we make sure that we're getting a return on investment for all the advertising and work that we're doing? So we're using artificial intelligence. And how do we do that in an environment that makes sure that we're creating return on investment? Part of it is looking at attributes of students that are most likely to be successful at Drexel. And we use artificial intelligence to help us do lead scoring. And maybe this is too much in the weeds in detail, but it gives us a chance to prioritize the counselor's activities that are automatically sent to them. So if we have a certain number of leads or prospective students that are in the pipeline, some of them that have characteristics that will indicate to us that they are most likely to be successful at Drexel will automatically be routed to the top, sent to counselors so that they're working those leads and working with those prospective students first in the list. Then we personalize the messaging. So let's say, Drum, you applied for a master's degree program and you already have 2 transcripts in, but you need 1 more. Maybe you have 1 reference letter in, you need 1 more. All of our systems allow us to have personalized, smart systems to communicate with you. So the minute a transcript comes in from one of your institutions, literally a second later, you'll receive a personalized communication based upon how you want to be communicated with. If you prefer text, we'll send you a text that says, Drum, we just received your transcript from XYZ University. You only have 1 more to go and 1 reference letter, and your application will be complete. So we have the ability to constantly communicate with these students in a way that makes them feel connected, lets them know how they're doing, creates a sense of urgency about the fact that we really want them as a student. And second of all, we're so close to finishing the application. We just have a few more things to do. And we're able to generate those types of personalized messages to them, and also personalized in a way in which they want to be communicated with.
That's fabulous. I'm not going to ask you the name of your CIO because everybody would be trying to recruit him or her from you.
Well, actually, it's interesting that you say that because we have a fantastic CIO because I chaired the search for him. And I can take really no credit for his success because he's fabulous. But these recommendations for how we personalize and improve our efficiency and effectiveness come from our frontline staff. I use the hippo example all the time. It's like, the highest paid person in the room is not the person with the best ideas. They're the people who find the money to execute. But at the end of the day, my staff have the best ideas because every student is a focus group. It might be a focus group of 1, but every student's needs are important to us. And we spend an enormous amount of time with student focus groups, asking questions, researching students who stopped out, researching students who left the institution, and contacting them and finding out why. We spend an enormous amount of time collecting this kind of data and asking how we can be better and what would have made a difference for them. And we operationalize it. So our staff that are on the front lines, who oftentimes are not paid attention to by presidents and provosts and deans and other people, these are the people we listen to because they're the ones that the students are talking to.
It kind of reminds me of when I do a strategic plan for an institution. We have a core planning team, which, is usually made up of the cabinet and the senior people. But then we do something that we call the stakeholder attunement process, where we're bringing in input from the frontline managers and the people who are actually in the trenches doing the work. And it's such an amazing way to do planning because people support what they help create. And when they have input into it, they own it and they'll execute it.
Yes, you're so right about that. And I mean, we find that to be exactly the same. So for us, the investments that we make, we have to be more efficient because the cost per acquisition is going to be going up. Our costs are going to be going up to compete in this highly competitive market. Second of all, we have to serve these students because it's really about making sure that there is value for investment. And all of us have to distinguish ourselves. So we want to be able to be distinct in terms of the way in which we serve these online students who are busy working professionals, who want to self-serve, who want information quickly, and they're quite demanding about that. They have choices. They can really go to any institution they want to attend, and we want to be that preferred institution for them, but we're not going to be unless we can meet their expectations.
Well, what you've done is you've just given the cookbook, or parts of it anyway, how to take your retention, your enrollment rates, your graduation rates, and put them off the chart.
Well, it's really about paying attention to every detail and every touch point that relates to the students. We will never be an institution that just recruits students. We want to bring students to our institution, and we want to be the preferred education provider for life for them. So we want them not only to come to our institution, we want them to graduate from Drexel University, and we want them to come back when they want additional certificates or advanced degrees, or just a professional development course or certificate. And of course, we want them to become donors.
Absolutely. That fundraising is one of those things. If you create such a outstanding student experience going through, the people, they remember that. And they're much more willing to make a donation to the university somewhere down the line.
Yes, exactly.
Well, if you had three things that you would tell your fellow presidents on how to do these kind of things and what they ought to be looking for, what are they?
Well, I think I'd take a step back and sort of talk about the changing environment. Many of our staff, our board members, are getting concerned about new institutions coming into the market, new institutions that are advertising, institutions that are going to be spending $500 million in 6 years, promoting their brand and changing their name in this environment. And so our board members and leaders get very nervous about the impact that these new entrants into the market are going to have on their institution and the institution's ability to compete. So with that being said, I would sort of set the stage and say, in the past, the major providers of online education were the large for-profit, a few large state universities that were in the online market, a couple of nonprofit institutions as well that loom large, from Southern New Hampshire to Liberty University. But the market forces are really changing this landscape as the Ivy League institutions move into this arena, and they become in some ways a triple threat. And let me explain what I mean by that. The large institutions of the past may be competitors from the standpoint that they serve degree completion students. So any institution that is serving working professionals with low cost, high volume, predominantly funded by financial aid or veterans benefits, tuition assistance for active duty service members, there is a lot of competition in that environment. For other institutions, the threats of the future are going to be the Ivy League institutions that are dipping their toe in the water in this space. For example, University of Pennsylvania, that has an undergraduate degree as well as a master's degree in computer science. The reason that they become a triple threat is that they have brand as an Ivy League institution. Second of all, they're changing their pricing structure for the online students. So, for example, the master's degree at the University of Pennsylvania, they're our neighbors right next door. It's 1/3 the price of their face-to-face program, and the face-to-face program is around $65,000. So the online program it's in the 20s, 20-some thousand dollars. Then the third threat becomes the focus of access, because they've also created a pathway of earn your way in. So a prospective student can decide to meet the admission requirements, the traditional admission requirements for the program, or earn their way in by doing very well in the first 4 courses of the degree program. And then they're automatically admitted if they meet the requirements. So if you take brand, discounted price, and access issues, this becomes a triple threat to other institutions from highly ranked brand name institutions. So each of us, as leaders of our institutions, need to be very clear about where our market niches are for the future. To your point in terms of strategic planning, we really need to make sure that we're strategic about the investments that we're making and not try to be everything to everyone, but focus our efforts in a few areas where we can be distinctive, where we can stand out, where the students really can receive value for the investment of their dollars, and that we can serve more than just a local market. We can serve a national market with distinction. That's not always easy for institutions to do because they are so insular sometimes. They don't always perceive themselves the way that the broader market perceives them. And finally, the closer we remain with our employers regarding what they need, what they desperately, urgently need in order to compete, and if we can provide those programs in a timely way to meet their needs, not what we want to offer them, but what they need from us, I think those institutions are going to be well set for the future as long as they can adapt quickly, offer the programs quickly, and offer programs that the companies are saying they need, not necessarily what's in the current portfolio of the institution.
Those are 3 great tips, and thank you for those. Those are great. So here's a personal question for you. What's next for Susan Aldridge? What are you excited about?
Well, we have so many opportunities at our institution. And so what excites me is the opportunity to launch new academic programs in niche markets like drug discovery and clinical trial research and legal compliance programs through our law school. These are programs that really are desperately needed in the environment. The employers really appreciate the fact that we're paying attention to what they need. Working professionals are coming back to school because there's so much change that's occurring. And when they come out of school with a degree, they don't always know what type of job they're going into. And they find that they have to come back to school to retool or get advanced knowledge through certificates, maybe stackable certificates. And I just find the environment and the changes occurring a very exciting time to be competing in this market and to be closely aligned with what industry, healthcare environments, government needs and expects from us. And if we can partner with our deans and the colleges, there are always some entrepreneurs that are excited about new opportunities to serve new student markets. So that's what excites me. Secondly, we've launched a couple of new projects also that might be of interest to your listeners. One is we created a website that's free and open. It's called Virtually Inspired, and it profiles innovations around the world in technology-enhanced education. It's free. It covers everything from artificial intelligence, robotics, virtual reality, augmented reality, and a whole plethora of other types of technology-enhanced education and case studies about how technology is transforming teaching and learning around the world. And we've gotten a couple of national awards for it, so I hope your listening audience might be interested in that. That's something that they can share with their faculty and staff to give them a vision of what's happening around the world. Second of all, we just recently created a new portfolio, if you will. It's called V Artifacts Plus, and it contains 500,000 artifacts, everything from virtual and augmented reality to 360-degree panoramas that are open source, that give our faculty and our instructional designers the opportunity to upgrade and create more robust courses for these students. These students don't want flat read-only, chat-only type courses. They want simulations and robust models and panoramas that they can sink their teeth into these courses, but we need to make it easily accessible for our faculty. So we created this robust portfolio of artifacts that our faculty and instructional designers can use to upgrade their courses, and it's a database that's easily sorted by topic area in a searchable database. And we created this with a company out of Oklahoma called 3 Dream Studios.
Well, that sounds fabulous. Well, gosh, Susan, just a wealth of information today for the listeners. Thank you so much.
Well, Drum, it's always a pleasure to work with you. I appreciate so much the leadership and the role that you have played over many, many years. So thank you for the contributions that you make, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much, and the same to you as well. I mean, your career is one of those, if somebody's coming up into higher ed to start a career, and especially a woman, I point at you and say, here's the role model, folks.
Oh, you're too kind. Thank you, Drum.
Thanks for listening this week. And a special thank you to this week's special guest, Dr. Susan Aldridge, president of Drexel University Online. Thanks for spending some time with us, Susan. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. Our next guest is Mike Goldstein, senior partner and higher ed practice leader for Cooley LLP, one of the top law firms in the country. Mike's an old hand at this, and he'll be spending some time with us to talk about the recent negotiated rulemaking process that just completed in Washington and what we can expect coming out of Washington in 2019. If you like this podcast, please take a minute to subscribe to the show. And if you're listening on the Apple Podcast app, would you please take a moment to give us a rating and review? You can find out more information and show notes at changinghighered.com. And if you have guests and/or other topics you'd like to hear about, please email us at podcast@changinghighered.com to let us know. Remember, creating sustainable higher ed institutions requires three things: taking a holistic view of your institution, aligning strategies, structures, and processes, and ensuring stakeholders are attuned to where you're going. Without any of those three things, you won't get your institution where you want it to go. Until next time.